good evening. This is Jacklyn Ryan with Ripples Rising, empowering voices creating waves of change. I'm having a second segment with House Representative Diana Gonzales Worthen. But she's also a citizen, a sister, a mother, and was a daughter to her parents. So this segment is about her unique perspective of what she was learning about family caregiving while her parents were in Texas, while she was residing in Arkansas. Now she does have other siblings, but you know, there's just always challenges in family caregiving. And we're going to explore how that experience has shaped her passion for protecting vulnerable adults and what changes she believes are needed to better safeguard our loved ones. We're going to discover her motivation for strengthening protection for those who need our voices the most. So welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey. So tell us about both your parents were in a nursing home or assisted living?
A nursing home.
Nursing home.
Yes, they were in a nursing home. Initially, we did everything that we could as far as in-home care. Okay, my mother had in-home care longer because my mother had multiple sclerosis, so she was in a wheelchair. She required a lift for transfers and just all kinds of things. And then with MS, your systems start to they're not working, they're not functioning like they normally would. So she had various medication, but also having to, she was prone to a lot of UTIs because the urinary tract was not functioning, your system, your bladder, etc. And so early on, once she went, as she her condition accelerated, then it came to a point where, okay, well, we need to make sure that just home health come in. So home health was coming in. Well, then but prior to home health, we had caregivers that would come in, and they would stay. Caregivers do come and go, and we did we checked on them and etc. So we did that. Then the home health. Well, then my dad fell and immediately needed 24/7 care, and then ended up with he had a brain injury, but then also developed Lewy body dementia. And so now we have a mom that needed 24/7 care, a dad that needed 24/7 care. So we were able to keep them at home with 24/7 caregivers. We hired them, some word of mouth, some care.com, some different. We checked references. Okay, so we did all of that.
Good.
And so, however, caregiving, as you know it, it is challenging to keep caregivers long term. We did have a few that stuck with us through thick and thin, and we were really happy about that.
They're golden. Those are golden.
Yes. And so so that was wonderful. But then as my mom progressed, her health declined, and my father too, there came a point when home health, they said, okay, we can't come as many days during the week as your mom and dad. They really need to have skilled nursing care, and so their care is now increasing, the level of care. Well, the first major obstacle we had was finding a place that would take both of them.
Yes.
Because my mother needed a lot of care due to her MS, and my dad, he had dementia. And so initially it was, we couldn't find a place that would take they would take both of them, but they would have to be in separate wings. Exactly. Exactly. And Well, they were married, at that point there's like 60 years. I mean, how do you tell your mom and dad they can't be in the same room? I mean,
Yeah.
And so with all of us, 5 daughters, doing our best to come and see them and be there on the weekends. We took turns, etc. But we finally found a place, and it was in our hometown, that allowed my mom and dad to be together.
Oh, good.
And so they were in a room together on the main floor. But then Dad started wandering, and then he needed to go to the memory care wing, and they allowed my mom to follow. Okay. So even though my mom was not mobile, but they were both together.
Yes.
And so then because of that, and just knowing kind of what was going on, and the caregivers, the CNAs, they were on a schedule where they would come and check on them every couple of hours. But we were realizing that we really needed to see what was going on a day-to-day, just to make sure they were okay. I mean, here I'm in Arkansas, my sisters are in different parts of Texas, and so we requested a video camera. And at first it was, no one else had a video camera, but they checked, and then they allowed us to have a video camera.
What year was this, roughly?
That was, let's see, that would have been maybe 2019, 20,
2019?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And so we had the cameras, and it was wonderful because I live here in Arkansas, so I could flip my on my phone and see what was going on in their room.
This was a private room for them only.
It was a
No
private
other
room,
roommate.
right? No other roommate. It was
Okay.
just the 2 of them, and the camera was positioned to where we could see them. So we could flip it up. Oh, they're both watching TV. Oh, they're both, listening to music, or they're, so we could see what was going on. But then on occasion, I remember several times where I would turn it on and Dad was on the floor.
Several times.
Several times.
Oh.
Yeah, several times. Turn it on and he's on the floor. Well, because it's a camera and it's recording, I could rewind it and see what happened.
Oh.
And he was starting to lose his balance a little bit more.
Okay.
And of course he didn't want to use a wheelchair. He didn't want to,
No.
all of that, and so, but what would happen oftentimes, he would slide off the bed, but he
Okay.
wasn't able to pick himself up.
Right.
And so he would be on the floor, and they were checking him every 2 hours.
2 hours.
So if he fell on the floor at the beginning of the 2 hours, he would be there until it was time. That's
2
not
hours.
that's not good.
No.
So what we found
Was there not a button he could push? Or he couldn't reach it if he's on the floor?
if he's on the floor, not really. And my mom, at one point, she could press the button,
Yeah.
but there came a point where she couldn't at all.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, with her MS. So the camera helped us see that he was on the floor. We would call the nurse on duty, nurse's station. They would connect us, and that's all we had to say. My dad's on the floor. It just happened.
Okay.
Can you send someone? And we could actually see, and no, very quickly they were there.
Wow.
And so when I think about that, I think about how that is a win-win for both.
Yes.
You make sure that if something is going on in that
Environment.
in between the gap of
Yeah.
when you come in to check and there you're gone, and then
Yeah.
anything can happen in
Anything
that
can
2
happen.
hours.
A fall.
Another fall, slipping, mom needing some attention,
Yeah.
whatever. And so we found it to be really, really good. Now, when a person has dementia, they can be a little bit more, they're irritable. And so we learned that, my dad wasn't real irritable with us per se, because we were his daughters, and we would talk to Dad like hey, Dad, what are you doing? You know, just a normal conversation,
Yes.
and he would respond. However, occasionally we would get calls that would say, well, your dad hit a nurse. We can't have him hitting our nurses or hitting our CNAs. And we thought, well, that doesn't sound like Dad. So what I would do is I would go back, find what happened,
Wow.
rewind it,
Yeah.
and it was the way he was being talked to.
It was his reaction.
It was his reaction.
They didn't.
You need to come and do that. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't grab a person. You don't yell at them, and you don't tell someone you need to.
No,
You know, if they
no,
have dementia, you
no.
know, you just. There are ways to.
Proper trained ways.
That's right.
to work with these people.
That's right. And so, but it was his fault, you know. So, you have to be able to look to see what happened beforehand.
That's
You know,
right.
what preceded that behavior, you know, to happen.
Yeah, I've got a saying where an action causes a reaction.
Yep.
And they're saying her dad's actions. No, it is his reaction to this action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the one that really stands at the forefront is when we got a call and we were told that my dad was trying to strangle my mother.
Oh.
And and of course we were like in shock. Okay, my dad absolutely adored my mother. So we were thinking, what is going on? And so I got on the camera, and basically my dad is thinking that they need to go home. And so he was basically, my mom was already in the wheelchair.
Okay.
And so she was sitting in her wheelchair, and he had the cord, you know, to call the call button.
Okay.
That cord, it
Yes.
was like extremely long. Okay, the cord.
Yeah.
Well, my dad, because he has dementia, he
Yeah.
didn't realize that all he needed to really do is just unclip it and leave it there.
Right.
He, in his mind, he's thinking he needs to take it with him. And so basically what he was doing, my mom was sitting down like this.
Mhm.
He was behind her, and the cord was here. And so she's sitting down, and so he has this long rubber cord, and he's doing this. He's up on his tiptoes and putting it around her, kind of like what you do. My dad was a farmer.
Oh.
You know, when you're or a cord.
Yeah.
You know, you're just gonna wrap it so that
You got to pick it up. So you can't.
And he
drag
was
your
up on
rope,
his-
You can't drag cords. You can't drag
Right.
stuff. It's got to be put up.
and then he would get on his tiptoes to make sure that it was not hitting her here.
Okay.
Okay, so to make sure it was okay. So she had the tubing from the call button all around her shoulders.
Okay.
And it might have come up to like about there.
Okay.
Well, when they came in to see what was going on, they assumed he was trying to strangle her.
Oh yeah.
So because she was all wrapped up with this cord.
He's always smiling.
Oh my gosh, that was horrible because they had already made the calls to send him to the psych hospital. They called in the social worker. They were immediately going to start new meds. They were going to, I mean, everything was like this because they felt my mother was in danger.
Oh my word.
And my dad it was that video camera, and, you know, blow by blow, minute by minute, I recorded everything, and then we sent the video clip of the before and what he was trying to do, and explained that he was not trying to strangle her. He was basically wrapping the cord so that she wouldn't run over to get tangled up.
Right.
He didn't have the mental capacity to just leave it.
Yeah.
You know, leave it over there.
No.
You know, and so he did what he would normally do with a rope on a farm, like if you're trying to, you know, or a hose,
drag.
you know, water hose, you know.
Pick it up.
That's so. You know, that was sort of the clincher for me. Like, what would have happened
my
if
word.
we didn't have that video camera to show exactly what happened?
Oh, actually.
What went
so,
on?
But didn't the people know they were being recorded? Didn't they know?
They knew, and they had they did have when in front of the door, when you first enter, like,
Okay.
you have their names,
Yes.
right? And then right there it says cameras, use of cameras.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody knew. I mean, I think my parents were probably the only ones that had a video camera, so
They
people
really-
knew,
They just really knew.
And but they didn't have access to the camera. We did. It was our camera.
Yes.
Okay, so they just saw the aftermath. And so that's the thing, is when you are working with loved ones, you're working with someone else's loved one. What may appear to be something awful might not be awful at all if you knew what happened beforehand.
See? Yeah,
Yeah.
the importance. So, are cameras allowed in living facilities in the state of Arkansas?
I don't think so.
I don't
No,
think so.
no.
Obviously, it's not a federal law. Okay. What do you think? My thing is about, everybody knows, fingerprinting and background
Mm-hmm.
checks. What are your thoughts about fingerprint based background checks? I've worked on this thing called FBI Rat Back, which is an ongoing real-time background check. I came across it because I'm a realtor in the state of Texas, and so it was required of me to fill out extra documentation back in like 2018 or 2019. So what's your thoughts about that here in the state of Arkansas, or even as a federal law?
Well, this is how I see it. We actually, if you're a teacher, I'm a teacher. First thing, we have to have FBI background checks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because we're going to be working with minors,
Mm-hmm.
our most vulnerable population,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Well, our seniors, our elderly, most vulnerable populations on the opposite side.
On the opposite
Okay.
side, yeah.
And so we should be doing everything we can to protect our loved ones, our elders that raised us, that were in the community serving. I mean, so many of the people that you meet, that are in a facility or
Yes.
they're at home or homebound. They all have stories to tell,
Stories.
right?
They had
And-
great lives.
And they had great lives. Many did volunteer work in the community, and crocheted, whatever. I mean, they all had, they've lived their life, and so we owe it to them. They're the ones that came before us.
Yes.
And we owe it to them for them to leave this world in dignity,
Dignity.
with dignity,
Yes.
and not to just throw them away.
Be in a warehouse. That's what we do. We warehouse our seniors. Just throw them away in the warehouse. Just warehouse them over here.
I mean, there's legitimate reasons why people have to go into a facility like with my parents. That would have been the furthest thing that we would have ever thought. And to be honest, we did have culturally, Latino families, they take care of their loved ones, right?
Yes.
And so that was a big decision we had to make.
Boy.
But here's the thing, we were all working full time.
Yes.
And none of us are retired still.
No,
None of us
no.
are. And although we wanted the best care that they could get, and we were able to leave them at home, have in-home care for as long as they could, as long as possible, until at which time they needed more skilled nursing care. And that was
nursing, because
and
it
that's
gets
what
beyond us.
That's right.
It gets beyond us.
Right.
If you have to have a Hoyer lift
That's right.
to lift them up, she cannot be lifting if her father's 210 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, there comes a point,
Physically.
and then we don't give shots. Now, I do have a sister who is a nurse, and so whenever it was her weekend, she could do a lot of the things that we couldn't do, but she's a
Right.
trained nurse,
Professional, yes.
But for the most part, there were a lot of things that the basics that a CNA could do, we could do.
Okay, sure, right.
But when it gets beyond, changing a catheter, doing wound care.
cleansing.
I mean, sometimes it's
Infections.
Yeah.
That's not your profession.
No,
You're
no.
an educator.
That's for the trained. That's for the trained health professional.
That is correct.
And we really there's a great need for trained health professionals. And at the same time, there's one of my constituents, when I was knocking doors, I asked her, I said, so what are some things that you see that we are needing? And I told her I was, running for re-election, and part of what I'm working on are strong schools, strong families, a strong Springdale. And so, and part of that strong families is just making sure families are being taken care of. And she goes, well, I happen to be a CNA.
Okay.
And I said, okay. And she goes, and I work in a facility. And she said, we don't get any benefits.
No.
She said, she said, there are many times where several of ours have their babies on a Friday. They come back to work on Monday and Tuesday.
Hear that?
Because they don't get maternity leave. They don't get those basic, that health care piece that sometimes,
Well, let's talk about that, Diana, because how can we attract quality caregivers, CNAs, while also ensuring a strong accountability and oversight? How can we attract, because the CNAs don't get paid much, about the same as a caregiver. It's really sad.
Yeah.
And the CNAs are the ones that are doing all the grunt work.
Yeah.
The nurses are at the nurses station. And I'm
It's
talking
hard.
to people where they talk the CNAs and not the nurses, because CNAs are the ones on the floor and in the rooms and having to do everything.
And they see the changes in your loved one. They know when they're not themselves, because they talk to them every day.
That's right.
They talk to them, they change them, they have those conversations, they
Change
check
the
on them, and they know when. I mean, the CNAs always knew when my mom was not having a good day. And we would call to check on her, and they would tell us, your mom is not having a good day. Yesterday she had a good day, but today, and this is what's going on. They know, and that's so comforting, knowing that you have that person there that cares and it's taking care of your loved one.
So the CNAs are under the School of Nursing, where they are fingerprint and background checked. Is that correct?
I don't know. I mean, I should know that.
That's fine.
I know that the nurses are.
See, and I think the CNAs are under the School of Nursing. Caregivers are not, but even so, the CNAs are not getting paid what they're worth.
Right. Yeah.
And they're not getting any benefits.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to keep CNAs.
It's hard to keep CNAs.
When my parents were in a facility, both of them, wow, there was so much turnover.
So much turnover.
Yeah.
There's so much turnover because of the low pay.
Yeah.
And if you had better pay, you'd get better quality caregivers.
And benefits.
And benefits.
Yeah. Because some of the CNAs, you can tell they love their work.
See?
They love their work. And I'm an educator, so I'll ask them, so have you ever thought about going back to school and becoming a nurse? Oh, no, I like doing this. This is what they want to do. They're happy with what they're doing, and that's fine. But we need to compensate them. They need benefits.
Yes.
Because those are the ones we definitely want to keep.
It is, and it's a quandary because, I say the froth is at the top, because you've got the administrators and you've got so many levels, and then you've got the owners and you've got shareholders, and it's like, it's got to be a profitable company. Well, you're not going to have a profitable company if you keep having turnover.
Right.
So, and you keep retraining. I just
keep retraining and
filling in the gaps and short-staffed. Then the good caregivers or the good CNAs get tired, get burned out, overworked, underpaid.
That's right.
Out of here.
And then some of them they're working too many hours.
Too many hours.
And that's a liability in itself.
Overworked, underpaid.
So if they're supposed to help turn your loved one and they haven't hardly slept, that's not good.
No.
That's not a good
liability issue.
That's right.
So,
but facilities, if they're short-staffed, that's what they do.
That's what they do.
Because they don't have anybody else. Yeah.
Because they're not paying enough. If a family is suspecting neglect, abuse, or exploitation, Diana, what can a citizen do? Who would they go to, do you think?
There are, when you walk into a facility, there are numbers that you can call to report. Okay, and then you can also call your state there's state people that you can call as well to report, like the state, in Texas, I don't remember exactly, but there's that oversee nursing homes. Oversee nursing rehabs. There is a number you can call if you suspect.
Now there's ombudsman, and that's a nationwide, but there's not enough ombudsmen to oversee the places. There's Adult Protective Services, APS.
Yes.
What about the Attorney General?
You could call the Attorney General as well, but they will investigate. So there are key individuals. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number, but that was something that we did. There were times when we did call.
Yeah.
And they investigated.
You can call DHS if your loved one's on Medicaid. My dad had fallen, had stitches, had a black eye. I called DHS. They finally showed up after 2 or 3 phone calls. But hey, he's not on Medicaid. He had a roof over his head. He was, quote, well off. He was well off. And so, no, they couldn't do anything about him because he was just an ordinary citizen and he was not on Medicaid, even though he had stitches and a black eye and paying over $200,000 a year to a home care agency. Yeah. I have a hurt in my heart, and I'm sorry to interject, but, somebody says, oh, Jackie, maybe you need some counseling on that hurt and anger. And I said, no, I'm going to hang on to it because that's my motivation to get this fingerprint and background checks to get better quality caregivers for our vulnerable loved ones, whether they are just disabled, not justice, but disabled or ALS. It's not only our senior population, our elder population, it's all of our long-term care needs serious reform, and we just want to close the chapter on it and say, oh man, dealing with my dad was so overwhelming. I'm sorry he's gone, but I'm glad that chapter's gone, closed, and let me go back to my life. But no, there's very few of us that are fighting the fight to have long-term care. And is there anything else you want to add, Diana?
We have a lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do.
And I think that we're all living longer. Our longevity, we're living longer, and so which is great. Okay, but at the same time,
quality.
Yeah, that's right. What is that quality of life going to be? And as a person ages, they need to be taken care of, and they need to
die with dignity.
Die with dignity, and we've got to take care of our elders. I mean, they're our vulnerable population.
They are.
Just like our kids are in school,
kids.
We do XYZ to protect our kids.
We do all this to protect our vulnerable children.
That's right. So we need to also do all this to protect our vulnerable elderly.
And on that, because I'm frantic. Call me frantic. I'm frantic. You need to be frantic. Who's going to take care of us 15, 20 years from now? I'm frantic. So it's not only about our elders now. It is now. It should have been done yesterday, a decade ago, but it needs to be done tomorrow, next year, whenever, before we get too old so we won't be warehoused later. So you won't be warehoused later. So call your policymakers, your legislators. There is phone numbers. They are not untouchable. And they are people like the rest of us. So I really appreciate you, Arkansas House Representative Diana Gonzales Worthen. Thank you very much for being on our show this evening.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me. I really appreciate it and loved discussing this very important topic.
Okay. Thanks. Good night.
Good night.